somewhere for lunch for half an hour, we're going to have a problem. Yeah, so yeah, okay. And perhaps outside the meeting, we could perhaps have a discussion afterwards. I know some members just raised this with me, Emma, about if it looks like we've got a long agenda in the future and we've got half an hour, if perhaps we could have some sandwiches in or something. Okay. 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 Yeah. Yeah, it's true, actually. Oh, no, it's just about breaks, Ken. So we're going to take a 10-minute break off about an hour and a half, another hour, and then another 10-minute, because we can't really fit in a half an hour lunch because we haven't got anywhere to go for lunch. So that was basically it, Ken. Right, okie dokie. Right, well, are we live now? Right, any declaration of interests? None? Okay, apologies for absence.
Yes, Chairman, there's apologies for absence from Mr. Shaw, Mr. King and Mr. Borman.
Thank you. Minutes of the meeting held on Tuesday, the 15th of June, page 7. This is from, in terms of their accuracy, it's page 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, Ken?
Chairman, on page 7, there's the committee members present. I'm not included, but I did have a word with James.
Yes, you definitely will see it, Ken, I remember.
I'll amend
So
the
we'll
minutes
amend
accordingly,
that.
Chairman.
Thank you. Okay. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. End of minutes. Any corrections other than Ken's? No. Thank you. Matters arising? Any matters arising? No. Thank you. Chairman's announcements? None. Public speaking, James?
There's no public speaking.
Thank you. Right, so we'll move directly on to cabinet reports. Capital budget, and that's page 27. And Debbie's here to present.
Sorry, I thought it was on. Sorry. Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this will be quite a quick item. Back in when we were producing the capital budget in February, we put a budget in of 3 million for refuge services, but that was on the proviso that at the time we're obviously carrying out the waste procurement. And that was for us to allow for the potential purchase of refuse vehicles and or the refurbishment of the existing waste depot at Fettenham. What's happened is, as we've gone through that waste procurement exercise, it's become established that actually the cheapest way of us providing those vehicles is for us to purchase them ourselves. And therefore, the estimated costs of that, or what's come in, or us to fund this, has been up to 5.7 million. So this report is simply asking for the capital budget to be increased to the 5.7. We will try and obviously get that under the 5.7, so that's the maximum we will spend, and that's being funded out of reserves. The reason it's come today is because of the timings. We obviously, as soon as we can, want to place these orders because the lead-in time for waste vehicles is quite substantive, just to make sure that we've got them in place for when the contract starts in April 2022.
Thank you. Thank you, Debbie. Grant?
Try again. Thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question. If we are going to be increasing our capital budget, the medium-term financial plan, I presume, because the cost of those vehicles was incorporated in the contract price, would that now be reduced as a result of us now having to buy the vehicles rather than the contractor? Thank you.
I think in the medium-term financial plan, we hadn't actually included the cost of them buying that because it was just such an unknown at the time. So obviously the medium-term financial plan will be updated. And once we've got a more certainty around the waste contract, any difference between what we need to put in or decrease or increase will obviously happen as part of that. But we hadn't actually budgeted for the vehicles in that waste contract, I don't believe, in the medium-term financial plan, just in the capital programme, which obviously forms part of that, but we'd estimated the 3 million.
Right, so anyone, Ken?
Thank you, Chairman. Just to be in 4.4 about the environmental. Sorry. Yes, to be in 4.4 about the environmental impact, we do talk about electrical vehicles. At this moment, of course, with the new Environmental Act coming through as well, what impact possibly will this have for the budget if we have to go a vast majority towards electrical, and has that been looked at, please?
My understanding is that in terms of the actual waste freighters themselves, at the moment, you can't get electrical ones. They just don't do enough miles for you to get back and forth to the tip and things like that. So I think it's more around the electrical vehicles for the very smaller ones, the subsidiary sort of items, rather than the big waste vehicles themselves at this point in time. But I know they are looking at alternative fuels, for instance, in that. I think that's all been taken into account in terms of this budget here.
Thank you. Sue?
Sorry. I guess the implication then is that we know who we're going to go with for the refuse contract. Otherwise, how would we know that they're not going to provide the vehicles?
I don't know, because I'm not that close to the waste procurement exercise that's being carried out. Emma is indicating.
Yeah, in terms of the contract, a decision hasn't been made, but all bidders have indicated that that's how that would be funded. So it's not favouring any of the bidders that have put the work in. That has come through as part of that procurement exercise, and that's how that's been indicated, hence this in front of you now. So no decision, to be really, really clear, no decision has been made yet on the waste contract.
Okey-dokey. Grant?
Right, let's see if this thing stays on now. Is it because the contractors don't want to carry the risk of the council having to convert from its fleet of vehicles to electric vehicles in the very near future, that they've all indicated that they don't want to acquire the vehicles themselves because the risk to them is far greater than to the council?
We're kind of straying into territory that me and Debbie can't answer. I have messaged relevant officers to see if they can come in, but we are straying into bits that we're not here for. We are for the capital budget, but I have asked assistant directors if they're around to pop in.
I was going to say, my understanding was that in terms of just financing, we can do it cheaper than those companies can, because we can access financing at a cheaper rate. Or in fact, we're actually not financing because we're not borrowing, whereas, you know, the companies would have to. That's my understanding, is that it's just cheaper for us to do it ourselves. But as I say, I don't know the ins and outs. I haven't been part of the procurement in terms of that procurement exercise.
Yes, I think it's fair questions, and I think the other officers being present would help, Emma, because clearly what we're obviously here for is just to make sure we've got the risk and understanding covered, which is what we're supposed to be doing, and we don't want to be negligent in that. As I understand it, going back on this, I remember ONS meeting and also the panel meeting as well. I know when I looked around the country that a lot of authorities have gone to purchasing their own vehicles because it was cheaper, and there was a saving to be made there. It was varying between 1% to 4%. So in terms of that, I think it's just the understanding that that is the case, and how have you arrived at that in terms of, you know, where the council's at? Is it driven by the contractor, or is it driven by us in terms of the finance, it being cheaper? And are we borrowing, or is it coming out of their own capital resources?
It's coming out of our own capital resources at the moment, but it's all
Okay.
part of the wider funding of capital. At the moment, that will come out of reserves.
Okay. Right. Are you aware of what the question is?
I caught some of it when I was watching on YouTube, but I don't mind. Could you just repeat it for me? Sorry. I don't know if there was another question. I was walking out.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
it's basically the basic premise in terms of the proposal is that we purchase our own vehicles from capital budget rather than financing, and that it's presumed that that would be cheaper than the contractor purchasing and then that figuring in the contract price with a margin. So if you could just flesh that out in terms of the basis for that, and how do you know that it will be cheaper?
Right. So all of the contractors did express, or we offered them the option to whether they would finance the vehicles or the council would finance the vehicles. All of them would come back and said it would be cheaper for the council to fund the vehicles. We don't pay the premium profit margin that obviously they would put on the cost of borrowing the money. We can borrow money cheaper than they can borrow the money out. And Rodney did do a cost analysis between whether if we purchase the vehicles or the contractors purchase the vehicles, and it worked out over the life of the contract somewhere between £500,000 and £750,000 cheaper for the council to actually fund the vehicles rather than the contractors to fund the vehicles. Does that answer your question?
£500,000 to 3/4, you say?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't got the exact figures in
No,
front of me, but he
but
produced a
approximately.
paper in that region. It was somewhere between £500,000 and £750,000.
Wonderful. Sue?
Thanks, Chair. Just wondered the length of the useful life of the vehicles that's being presumed, and is it certain that we'll be allowed to use those vehicles for that period of time?
The vehicles have a life of 10 years, but they can be modified during the life of that time as electrification comes online. There's options to change from diesel vehicles, because they'll all be Euro 5 diesel vehicles to start with, running on HVO, some of them running on HVO fuel, which is the greener fuel. But there are options to reconfigure them to electric during the life of the contract, probably about 5 years in the contract, because that's the point where electrification will become cheaper. At the moment, an electric vehicle costs £400,000 compared to £200,000 for a Euro 6 diesel, even running on HVO fuel.
Supplementary. And do we have any idea of the rough cost of that conversion to electric vehicle?
That isn't costed in the contract price at the moment, because it's just impossible to tell the 5 years in advance. The other thing is that there is an option for the contractors not necessarily to have to use new vehicles right from the beginning of the contract, so they can use existing vehicles that have still got some life left in them. So once that life runs past 10 years, they can then replace them with electric vehicles. So say if they've got 5 years left in the life, in 5 years' time, there's an option then at that point to replace them straight away with electric vehicles when the technology's got that much better.
Right. Grant, before I let you, well, you're funding on this, so okay, I'm guessing that on what's just been said. So far away, Grant, and then Caroline, yeah.
Just on that refurbishment, who would pick up that cost if they needed to be replaced in 5 years' time, for example? Would the council then have to buy electric vehicles, or you know, who's going to carry that cost of replacing that vehicle if it's council-owned vehicles?
They're not replacing them. They'll be the existing vehicle. They just they effectively, all they do is they take the diesel vehicle engine out, replace them with battery technology. That cost would sit with the council because there are assets. But obviously, we're not paying the £400,000 for an electric vehicle now. So further down the line, we do have to pick that cost up. If they're not using new vehicles right from the beginning, then again, we don't pick that cost up. That's a cost because that's a cost to the contractor. And if those vehicles fail to break down effectively or need to be replaced within that period, that's a contractor cost, not a cost that sits with the council.
Yeah, but my question really is, we're being asked to increase the capital budget for vehicles. So we're going to buy the vehicles. If we're going to have to replace or refurbish or whatever during the life of this contract, then is 5 million going to be sufficient? That's the question I'm really going for.
The contract, the price at the moment is based on all diesel vehicles at the moment. It's impossible to say, or not possible to calculate the actual the cost in 5 years' time of replacing those vehicles. So, or not replacing, sorry, changing into electric vehicles. So there could potentially be another capital cost to the authority, but the 5.7 million, which is the maximum cost for all the vehicles at the moment, based on diesel, Euro 6 diesel. If you wanted a whole electric fleet at the moment, you're talking probably double that cost, over £10 million. But obviously, in 5 years' time, the cost of electric will be considerably cheaper, probably much down to the cost of 200,000. So that's why it's been phased like that. It will, in the long term, save the council capital money.
Okie dokie. So Caroline, and then Sue, and then I think we'll try and wrap it up then. Caroline?
There are electric trucks already. Nottingham, Islington and Cambridge are already using them. Have we not thought about doing maybe half and half now and use the electric trucks for suburban areas? Because they're saying they're saving from 60 to 70 litres of diesel per day on these trucks, which is a saving. It just seems that we should invest now. And maybe, do you know what I mean? Sorry, not good at words.
Yeah, some of the bidders are potentially proposing the use of some electric vehicles from the beginning for some of the urban rounds. I think, as previously said, the vehicles are not capable of doing the mileage that's required. The Cambridge vehicle is a good example that they can't actually use the vehicle. They have a vehicle there, but it doesn't actually operate. They can't charge it effectively at night, and it doesn't. And even in an urban area, it doesn't actually satisfy the rounds. But some of the bidders could come forward with a number of electric vehicles from the beginning. But of course, that impacts upon the price of the contract to themselves. So they're balancing that. What most of them are coming forward with is the use of HVO fuel, which reduces CO2 by 90%. It's marginally more expensive, but it reduces CO2 and the particulates by 90%.
Thanks, Chair. Just a final question, whether there's any grants available from government for moving to electrified vehicles?
Not that we're aware of, or the bidders have made us aware of. Not at this stage.
Okay. And if I can just clarify this point again. So we're talking about 5.7 million because that's the cost of all of the vehicles now at £200,000. That's the estimate at the moment. Would that be funded from capital? I know I've asked this question, but you did mention about finance when you was referring to Rodney you introduced it again. So I'm just clarifying again. So are we saying there's 5.7 million set aside for covering this from our capital budget? However, you intend to try to finance this?
So it will be funded from reserves, but as we go through the 5-year capital programme, depending on the other items that come into that capital programme, if there is a need to borrow, then it may be that the future replacements, or if we don't buy them all from year one, it may be that then that's subject to financing, but the rate we can borrow at is significantly lower than a commercial company could borrow at. But at the moment, that the idea is that this will be funded from reserves.
Okay, so at some point in the future, if there was an upgrade needed, perhaps conversion to electric, then you could borrow at that point.
If we haven't got sufficient capital reserves at that time, but as I say, it depends what else is happening in the capital programme, what other items are coming forward.
I'm really pleased you clarify that, because this is about, from ONS, obviously for the council, ensuring that the risk is covered, Debbie, and we're not in a situation where, we can't do that because we haven't got sufficient capital. But what you're clearly saying, and can minute this as well on clarification, is that you could borrow at that point. Therefore, we're not in a position that you wouldn't be able to upgrade to electric when it's available.
Yes, and obviously, if the situation was that the company was providing it, or the successful bidder, they would be in the same position, and obviously having to borrow that money potentially to do the upgrade anyway, plus putting the cost margin on top. So even us doing the upgrade is going to be cheaper than if we were in the same situation via the company supplier.
I presume that what we will then do for future in the budgets is actually set aside a capital replacement programme.
We can do that. We could make a contribution from revenue funds each year into a reserve to build up that replacement. That's something if members wanted to do that. Obviously, it depends. It then puts a strain on your revenue budget. So, that's something that we would have to look at in the whole context of the revenue budget, and whether there is sufficient room in there to allow that to happen. Otherwise, you could put your strain on your revenue budget that way round, if that makes sense, because we can borrow to fund the capital. We can't borrow to fund your ongoing revenue budget every year.
And consequently, Debbie, I take it that could mean that you have a spike in council tax on a particular year because you're in that situation. So you want to spread this and even it out, I guess.
Yes, I mean, the impact of borrowing, obviously, then you pay the interest and that comes into your revenue. So it's a balancing act, really, what to do. But putting a contribution into your reserves and say, you need to make sure that you've got sufficient income in the year to cover that contribution.
Thank you. Okie dokie. Well, before we just move to the recommendation, James, I think we've had quite an effective bit of scrutiny here, and thank you, thank you, Simon, for popping in as well to help support Debbie and Emma on this. It would be really good if we could just have the minute reflect the clarification, particularly around, and it's an approximate figure, we know this, the $500,000 to $750,000 savings we believe to be there at the moment, plus also the points around, the risk in terms of the capital covered as well, and the points that have been raised around future electrical upgrade. Now that could be covered, and if that's reflected in the minutes, then we've done some effective scrutiny there for Cabinet to look at as well. So on that basis, if I move now to the recommendation, which is on page 29, recommend to Council that the 2020-21 capital budget refuge service is increased from 3 million to 5.7 million. All those, proposal for that. Ken, seconder. Grant, all those in favour? Yes, looks unanimous. Yes. Right, thank you very much, Simon. And we're about 6 minutes ahead of schedule because we need to be at the moment. Debbie, you're staying for us, aren't you? Thanks a lot, Simon. That's page 30. And Debbie, far away, please, again.
Thank you, Chair. I last year, I think members might remember that originally we were looking to the possibility of using the LGA Mutual for our insurance. Unfortunately, that fell away and is no longer an option. So we are participating in a joint insurance procurement with South Norfolk. Both our existing insurance contracts come to an end at the end of September, and we need insurance in place for that date. We're currently going through that process, and in terms of timelines, though, at the moment, there doesn't seem a suitable cabinet meeting timetabled in place for us to make that decision on the award because of the value of the contract. It means it would be a cabinet award in terms of the contract. Therefore, we're seeking delegation really to the Assistant Director of Finance in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance at Broadland, but because it will be a joint contract also with the portfolio holder at South Norfolk as well to award that contract. The criteria in terms of the procurement has already been set out, and the potential bidders know what that is. That's set out in terms of section 4 of your papers. So in terms of how we're going to award, as I say, the basis has already been set out. That will be what we will follow. But this delegation really is there. The alternative is either we have a special cabinet to make that award.
Okie dokie. And any questions on this? Sue?
Thank you, Chair. My only question is it suggests in 2.3 that the cost of insurance is about 100,000 a year for Broadland and 400,000 a year for South Norfolk. How would the tender be split? Would it be clearly identifiable which costs are going to which council? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely, because they're insuring specific assets of the council. So that element there will be in terms of, so yeah, they will be split the costs. We will identify those and be able to. The reason why South Norfolk's is higher is because of the leisure services, and they own more assets in terms of fixed assets like the leisure centres, and also because of the in-house depot and waste service they run. So that's why that's substantially higher.
Right.
Right, it's working. Good. Just two questions. It's going to be delegated to the officers and portfolio holders. When setting up this, the tender and details of the contract, at what stage or have they, portfolio holders, been involved in this this contract? It's important for me to understand at what stage they have been involved, so that they're fully aware of the ins and outs of this contract, why it was done now and not further down the line. And then the other question is to do with the 55-45 split. Is that appropriate for this contract, or the costs involved in it?
Yeah, thanks. What Sue just clarified.
Yes, so as per Councillor Catchpole's previous question, the cost will be split in terms of the officer time. That will be 45-55 in having done the procurement. The actual cost of insurance will be split out in that, from the supplier, because as I say, you're insuring your own assets, and so you will be paying for your own asset cover there. In terms of the portfolio involvement, Trudy, Councillor Mancini-Boyle, has been involved. She was part of or had a seat on the LGA mutual bond, so she's fully aware of what happened there. She's been fully aware and supportive of the need to go to procurement now. We extended, and there has been a previous cabinet paper that came, I think it was last February, in 2020, just before we went into lockdown, that set out the fact that unfortunately the LG Mutual wasn't going to go ahead, and we would need to go to procurement, and the timetable was set out then, and officers were, it was agreed that officers would proceed with that procurement, which they have been doing.
Yeah, and the sum for us is 100,000, South North of 400,000.
That's per annum. Obviously, the contract is being let for a number of years.
It's on page 31. Okie dokie. Just one other point on this, because it's going to, and just reference here to Emma as well, because this is going to the portfolio holder and the director, and not to cabinet, which does sometimes happen. That would be subject to a call-in if necessary.
It will be recorded on the portfolio holder forms that are then sent round to members for information once that decision's made. But your call-in opportunity is also at this point in time, because the decision's being made now, to delegate that to the portfolio holder.
And at the point that it's awarded,
That's you're then awarding it at that point in time.
Yeah.
So as I said, that will go round for that 5-day call-in.
with the
Absolutely.
5-day call-in. Yeah. So just for your information, so there is also, once it does get awarded, there's the 5-day call-in for myself or, group to call it in at that point, because it's not going to cabinet in a normal way. Just on process, just making sure everybody's aware of that. So there is that process in place, due process in place, Emma. So on that base, Lynn? Okay.
Just one point for clarification, Chairman. The insurance covers motor fleets. Now, the vehicles are going to be housed, I think, through the contractor. Is that right? The vehicles that we'll buy. Does the insurance cover that area as well, or will the contractor be responsible for that?
I'm afraid, Chair, I don't have that detail. I haven't been that close to this actual procurement exercise. I'm afraid the AD of Finance was leading on this piece of work. What I can say is there will be appropriate cover, whether that's provided by us or the waste contractor. That will absolutely be made sure that that's in place. But which ones carry in that, I don't know. I can't give you clarity on that. I can obviously follow that up and come back to the committee and circulate an answer by email.
Thank you.
The vehicles are going to be housed by the contractor.
At the depot, I think Ken's referring to.
Yeah, the contractor will have the use of those vehicles and will, wherever they're operating from, will make sure that, they will look after them.
Okie dokie. So move to the recommendation on page 32. Proposer. Is there a proposer? Yep. Proposer. I'll second it. All those in favour?
Unanimous, Chairman.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Debbie. And next item is Broadland's use of Norfolk Strategic Fund grant, page 37. And lead officer here is Tig Armstrong, who is on his way. I know. That's where we are. 10 minutes in front at the moment.
Chairman, it's my ignorance. But you said page 37, but it says page 33 on mine. Yeah. It's me going wrong.
You're right. I've got two agendas here, and I've got different numbers on them.
see.
You're right. You're absolutely right. It's page 33.
Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, and this one, it's got a typo. Tig, welcome. How are we today? Good. No problem. You want bifocals like me? Okay. Yeah, and would you, and if you make sure your mic's on for us, Tig, as well.
Thank
Far away, Tig.
Thank you. So this paper, just a brief background of the paper. I won't go through it all in detail, but happy to take questions, obviously. The Norfolk Strategic Fund is essentially repurposed pooled business rates money. So members will be aware that every year there's an allocation or a bidding process into what's known as the pooled business rates, which is managed by the Norfolk County Council. It was decided last year by the leaders group in Norfolk to repurpose that.
Yeah, just hit it again.
Does it time out? No? And so it was decided last year to repurpose it, call it the Norfolk Strategic Fund, but essentially it was funding to be used to aid in the economic recovery related to the pandemic. There was an initial draft proposal that we put forward. We had to, there was a fixed allocation to each council round, but there was a fixed allocation. We simply had to provide a budget for proposed works to use that strategic fund. And so table 1 in the paper in front of you has that initial proposal in it. It's subsequently been decided to, at this stage, not pursue this program of business startup support called enterprise facilitation. And so this paper on table 2 shows the proposed revised program of works for the use of the Norfolk Strategic Fund grant money, which is about £428,000. And so you can see on table 2 the proposed program of works, and also so the paper essentially asks for Cabinet to endorse that revised program, but it also asks Cabinet to give delegated authority to the Assistant Director of Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder for economic development to determine the use of about £100,000 unallocated funding. Is my voice dropping in and out?
Yeah.
No? It's all right?
No, Tig, I think also if you could just pop your mic a little bit, it's down a bit. Just tip the direction down a little bit on your mic to get mic. All right.
That might be better. Yes, so it's asking for delegated authority for the assistant director and the portfolio holder to make some final decisions on the balance of those funds, £100,000. What I would say in relation to that particularly is that the economic development team is currently working on a revised program of business support activities, and we've actually presented sort of the high-level direction of travel presentation to the Economic Success Panel recently. I don't know why it's doing this. I'm trying very hard not to move. To Economic Success Panel. So I think the idea of having some flexibility and having some delegated authority about the use of the fund will be very helpful as we finalise that business support program. It's flashing red as well. They're allergic to me, obviously. So that's in essence what's behind the paper. I won't say any more than that on the paper. We will, on the basis of this being approved by Cabinet, resubmit this to Norfolk County Council as the approved program, and then we have until the end of the next calendar year to spend the Norfolk Strategic Fund grant funding. And I'll leave it at that, Chair. Have questions?
Great. Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. We're having a real good day today, aren't we? Yeah. Just on this, once the decision's been finalised by Norfolk and it comes back, will you be coming back to ONS to actually tell us the programme of what you intend to spend the funds on? Or where will this be presented? Because like I say, you're just going to spend £100,000, whereas the scrutiny and overview for that, and would the ONS or the cabinet agree with it? So how does it come back to us?
Well, Emma might come in on this one, but my proposal, I'm not proposing to bring it back because the cabinet paper is asking for that delegated authority to make that decision on that balance of funding to be delegated to the assistant director in consultation with the portfolio holder. So if that was approved, it wouldn't need to come back again to ONS and/or cabinet. Is that right, Emma?
Yeah, and also, as with the item before, there'll be a portfolio holder form completed and circulated to all members confirming the decision, so you'll be able to see the decision and how that's allocated.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you very much, Dick.
Right.
Thank you. I presume this is going to go up as well. Quick question. The possibility of funds being left over at the end of next year, is that a possibility, or is there pretty much a big demand for this funding? Thanks.
As I said, the team working with portfolio holders and others are developing an enhanced program of business support. I think the chances of there being funds left over are pretty small. The demand for business support is only going to increase, so we can direct it towards things like further startup support for startup businesses. We can direct it to activities like support and business support and provision of grant awards of grants and provision of training programs for people looking to grow their businesses. So I think actually as we determine what the shape of our business support program is, I think the demand will continue to exceed what we can supply. So I think the risk is negligible that there'll be money left over.
Sue?
I noticed that we've got 2 or 3 delegated things on here today, and I wonder if that's a trend or just a coincidence.
Do you want me to?
Yeah, because I know that there was actually an explanation given earlier on for the previous one. There hasn't actually been an explanation given for this one, so yeah, far away.
It's just circumstance, so there's nothing untoward going on. Don't worry, and I'm sure Tig can explain if you need in more detail why this one's been delegated as is. Sometimes it's to do with the timing of a decision to go with meetings. There's various different reasons for it, but they only come through as a delegated decision if that's absolutely needed. But as I say, I'm sure Tig can cover the reason why.
Yeah, far away, Tig.
In this particular instance, the reason is, as I've said, we are in the process of rethinking, redeveloping our business support program. We haven't got the final details of that yet. That's something that we're working through. It's just extremely helpful at this point to not commit in advance to every single piece of that business support program. It's useful for us to have some flexibility so that we can adjust the program or add things to the program as it becomes clear what the needs of the businesses actually are. So it's just at this point in time, because this paper coincides with the development of that program, it just allows for some flexibility to adjust to meet the needs of the business community.
Okay, Caroline?
Knowledge, the contingency is nearly 100 grand. What additional activities would that cover, please?
Essentially, the previous question, it's a contingency for that reason, in that at this point, as we're working to develop the full suite of support activities, business support activities, we haven't defined all of that at this point, and that's why we're asking for the contingency so that we can adjust the scale and scope of the program and have money available to meet that need.
Sue?
Thank you, Chair. Lost the page. It's page 36. In the table, it says 135,000 is allocated to public realm improvements. Could you just describe what you mean by that? Thanks.
So members will be aware that last year, towards the beginning of the pandemic, we undertook a range of changes to road layouts and some enhancements to public realms in some of the key market towns. Some of those changes have now been reversed and taken away, but some of the changes we think have been quite well received, and this gives us the opportunity potentially to make some of those changes more permanent, but it also gives us an opportunity working closely with the town councils particularly and local members. It gives us an opportunity to actually make some public realm enhancements, that might be useful for the town. We are absolutely seeing, and it's becoming clear that dropping off of footfall is real in Norwich and the market towns. We've got statistics yesterday from the Norwich BID, the Business Improvement District. Footfall in Norwich is down by 40% at the moment, which is enormous. People are reporting at a meeting last night at Wyndham Town Council, Wyndham businesses are reporting similar sorts of, drop off in footfall. So we think that the enhancement of the public realm and making our market towns even more attractive places to go to as destinations, but also there is evidence now that as people's shopping behaviours start to change. I'll use one example. The provision of 5 to 10 minute parking bays is something that shopkeepers are asking for. Because a number of shops are saying that the way people are using their shops, pharmacies is a good example, they're not coming in prepared to stand in a queue. The pharmacies have actually got systems arranged where you can call up and say, I'll be there at the front of the shop for 5 to 10 minutes. Someone comes out with a brown paper bag with your medicines in there, and off you go again. They don't want to get out of the car. So actually making some small changes in the marketplace that actually responds directly to people's changing shopping habits. And so we think having this money set aside will now enable us to make some of those small changes which are consistent with what's happening locally in the towns and in the economy.
Yes, sir.
Just supplementary, I wonder how you were consulting with the businesses in the market towns to find out what they think.
Yeah. So we will start, and obviously the discussion will sort of happen initially with town council and local members, but there would be some form of consultation process. We haven't determined what that is, but it'd either be, we can get to most of the businesses on foot, should we need to. We can certainly run, so it's been suggested when we were talking to the Wyndham Town Council last night, we'll run an event separately and ask businesses to come along and give us their thoughts and ideas. So it'll be we'll absolutely build that level of consultation in, we'll either go there and talk to businesses one at a time, or we'll have some sort of event and or both. We'll absolutely make sure businesses are involved.
Right, thanks. And of course, it'd be interesting to see this time next year just how much of this downturn, 40%, changing habits, still the same in a year's time. You just don't know at the moment, do you? But the point that I think Sue was mentioning, and I know me and Joe's had a discussion about this before, and I had with you, Tig, as well, with using some of the market towns and what happened in Aylsham, that at that point of consultation with businesses, that the town council, but the members are in those areas also involved in that consultation, because if one part's blind, it can cause all kinds of misunderstandings and problems. And we've had some of those. I mean, it's fair to say, actually, over the last year or so. So, Joe, yes, you want to come in?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Steve. I just want to sort of galvanise what Tig has said. We will go to public consultation with the town councils. We will be out there with the members, with the businesses. We've had some work done by Urban Flow in a
Switcher, are you
Has it gone off again? Oh, sorry, it's the curse of the microphone this morning. I do apologise. We've been working with Pinnock, who have been speaking to our town councils, especially in Reetham and Aylsham and Urban Flow. We really want to make the town centres as aesthetically pleasing as possible and to welcome more visitors. I think people, probably their confidence in going into major cities will probably be reduced as a result of the pandemic, and it would be nice to attract more visitors into our town centres to improve the chances of our businesses. Also with the enterprise facilitation and the business startup grants and mentoring that we will be doing, with furlough dropping off at the end of September, I think we will see a rise in people wanting to start their new businesses up, and we will be well placed and proactive to help that and give advice and grant aid. So I would ask you to support that. Thank you.
Yeah, and as so Joe, having the members involved at those points, and some of the market towns like Aylsham are heavily engaged at the moment, which I think you're aware of residents and town council group, which are meeting and have been meeting around layouts in Aylsham, knock-on effects, which of course need to be worked through, as we had issues with this before, and then consult back with Broadland in that process as well. So this communication between members, town councils, yourself, is really key in all of this. So Grant,
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just a quick question. Of this money that we've now set aside, how much is going to be to cover the cost of the council, and how much is actually going to benefit the businesses out there?
oh, right.
Good question.
Yeah.
An easy one to answer, 100%. So in this particular grant fund, none of it can be directed towards covering staff costs. So this will all be deployed as, grants directed to businesses and or support for communities.
Good clarification there, Grant. Thanks. So, without further ado, I think we can wrap this up now. The recommendation is on page 37. So we've got 8.1, Cabinet endorsed proposed revised programme of activity to be funded from the Norfolk Strategic Fund grant. Cabinet agrees to delegate authority to the Assistant Director of Economic Growth in consultation with the portfolio holder, development to determine the use of balance of the grant monies, 99,000 in support of the economic recovery. Proposer for that, Ken and Grant seconded. No, Ken proposed, Grant seconded. All those in favour? It's unanimous. Wonderbar. Thanks very much. Thanks, Steve. Next item is moving towards item 12, moving towards the first-class customer service, page 38. Ken, I think we can concur on this one. Yes. And Sean Crook. Hi, Sean. Welcome. Pleased to see you. Yes, and if you could fire away for us, please, Sean.
Got it now? Thank you, Chair. Customer satisfaction was identified as a corporate Spark transformation project back in January 2020, and customer complaints was identified as one of our key projects under the New Ways of Working programme, both of which have been reported in through the Spark coordination groups. So we've brought those two pieces of work together under a title moving towards first-class customer service, which sets out an ambition for the council moving forward. During the review stage of the projects, we identified that while we do many things well in terms of engaging with customers and in specific areas we coordinate and ask customers what they need, we don't have any overall oversight for customer experience and or complaints across the council, and didn't have an overall strategy for developing our customer service provision to meet the evolving needs of customers, particularly as we come out of a pandemic situation where we've changed the way that we engage with customers through necessity rather than design. This report represents a starting point for us to move towards evolving our services to meet the evolving needs of our customers and the expectations of our customers, and moving us into a position where we can start to measure customer satisfaction in a kind of central way. So we're setting out before you some recommendations. which include a clear customer strategy, which provides a basis for how we'll transform our services moving forward, and ensuring that we engage with customers, gather that information and use it to change our services. A customer charter, which we would like to publish externally, which sets out what customers can expect from us, and importantly, tells customers what we need from them, which helps us protect our staff on the front line. We've also proposed a new complaints policy, which incorporates best practice from the Ombudsman, and that picks up some key points like making sure that the service area is responsible for responding to complaints, engaging with customers early, resolving complaints at the first opportunity, but capturing lessons learned. Capturing lessons learned in a structured way so that we can use that to help improve our services, and ensuring that if customers are not satisfied with the response at the first stage, there's an independent review of that complaint to make sure that we provide a full response at the second stage, and that we do everything we can before a case moves on to the Ombudsman. We've also proposed an unreasonably persistent complaints policy. This is not a huge issue in the council, but we do have some customers where, despite having a full and frank response from us and a complete response from us, they aren't happy with that and will come back to us to a degree where it causes difficulty for us. So we proposed a policy which just sets out how we deal with those customers in a kind of formal way. And then finally, we've proposed a new customer insight and experience lead role, which will kind of be the person that brings all of that together, picks up a number of areas that we identified in the organisation where, although the work was done in pockets across the business, I think this is dropping out again. Pockets across the business, there was no overall kind of central control for that to bring all that insight together. For me, customer experience insight is crucial to how we transform and develop our services as we move forward. We talk a lot about putting the customer at the centre of what we do. This actually allows us to make those decisions based on data and analysis, so we inform the direction we go forward. Once we get these in place, this gives us the building blocks to actually start to build a series of customer service standards, which is something that we want to move to next. We think we should be able to say to customers, this is what you expect from us in real terms, but we don't have the data yet to be able to do that. To start that piece of work, we've run a pilot customer satisfaction survey to test out the right kinds of questions. We ran that on the old website. We've just taken that down. It was only popping up when customers have been on the website for a certain period of time, but a good response rate to that. We're doing some analysis now, and that will inform what we propose to do as we move onto the new website. We've, of course, then got to look at all the other channels that customers come to us through to make sure that we can then capture the feedback from all of those. So that's kind of where we're up to. So we also want to widen out, once we get the new customer insight and experience roll in, providing it's approved, we want to roll out more customer forums, bespoke kind of customer engagement to it. So each time we transform a service, we really do engage and talk to our customers to understand what their needs and requirements are. So I'm very happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, good morning, Sean.
Morning.
With the new customer engagement and insight lead, could I ask, we're going to get a load of data do come through. At what stage are you going to report to the council itself? As councillors, we'd like to know what the response is going to be and the figures and who's satisfied and who's not. So is there a mechanism to report every 3 months, or how are you going to do it?
Still involving that, we absolutely intend to come back into councillors and reports back. The idea is that we publish this data externally to councillors, but also to our customers, so that we can say this is how we're doing. So I think we've just got to first of all get a baseline for those measures, so we know what we're expecting. Then we can start to publish how we reacting and performing against those measures. There is also a customer satisfaction measure in the delivery plan, which will bring this together into a kind of central, how satisfied our customers with the work that we're doing. We just need to make sure we cover all the different channels. If we don't get this right, we'll only be getting feedback from customers who've had a bad experience. We know many customers have a great experience with us. So an example would be some of our benefits calls, some of our council tax calls, which the majority of them are very positive outcomes. We don't really have a mechanism for capturing that feedback at the moment, so just got to do a few mixes in the background together. But yes, absolutely, report back on a regular basis, and happy to talk about how we can do that really useful for customers. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Carolyn?
What was your website? and Emma knows this, there are no contact numbers on there for people to actually ring the council. They used to be on the Broadland website. I know a lot of people can use the internet, can use it to fill out forms, but also a lot of people like to speak to somebody. And not to have a direct phone line to a department, I think that's not right. That's not, it's not customer satisfaction. It's difficult to get through.
I mean, it's a fair question. What we see this role doing is actually getting out and speaking to customers to say what's missing for you, what do you think you need. And I think we all think we know what everybody needs. We're all residents in our own rights, but I think actually what we've missed in the past is some detailed analysis, and questions like that are really good questions that we can ask. We can actually ask supplementary questions in the customer satisfaction survey to say, would it be better if, would you prefer this? And I think it means then we're making those decisions based on need, a customer need or a customer demand. So we could well be right, that may be a missing point from the website, but for me, I would like us to kind of drill into some of our customers, maybe bring some of our most useful customers back and say, well, let's test some thinking with you. We're not going to put a phone number on, or we are going to put a phone number on. Let's see what their feedback is. But yeah, I don't know if that answers the question.
You asked me, I need phone number.
Okay, I'll put you down first on my list.
Yeah, if I can just follow through on this. I'm aware of residents in my area that actually need a phone number. And that's probably true of other councillors. I've seen some nods around the room. And I know also when you go to insurance companies now, when you go to a whole range of service, private sector, you normally end up on a second page where you've got phone numbers. So there is a customer service number you can get through to, or that if it's to do with house insurance or car insurance. And I am finding that myself a bit, it's not looking like good customer service to me in terms of access. And I'm aware of, as I said, residents in my area, particularly when some around the age of 80, etc., who actually just need to get on the phone. And all they've got is a landline. They don't have mobiles, they don't have internet, and it's quite difficult as well. So this is an issue that's out there. And I hear what you're saying about you wish to do some survey feedback to see whether numbers are required. I'm not quite sure how you're going to do that with people who need phone numbers and don't access at the moment, because I'm not quite sure you're going to access them.
So I don't know if you just want to I'll pick up on that quickly. I think we're saying that customers, we publish a phone number for our main reception. I think you're talking about dialing directly into service areas. I think one of the things we need to understand is it better for a customer to have a direct line into a service area and not necessarily get through to the person they need to speak to, or come through our main central switchboard where we will have an understanding of how to direct those customers to the person they need to speak to without potentially them ending up at an answer phone or a mailbox. There are some challenges in there about how we deploy our resource. And I think some of the new ways of working we've got, sorry, is this dropping out again? Some of the new ways of working we've got to understand with remote working, with our staff not necessarily being in our main buildings, that may allow us to offer a different offering for customers over a wider range. So it could be that we need, it could be that it's better to bring people through a central number, maybe direct those calls through some of our automated messaging, and then make sure that we take them through to the right hunt groups, rather than publishing a number which, if it becomes out of date, doesn't necessarily take them through to the right person. So I think that's our thinking on this, but we always want to test and improve.
I know you made reference to Debbie. Did you want to come in or not?
No, I think Sean's exactly that I was going to make, that the main office phone number is absolutely on the website for people to call. We have that automated popular services where people press the number to then go directly into the hunt group for relevant service, and that will be picked up rather than publishing individual numbers. So that ability is absolutely on the website. And just to add, we're obviously trying to we know it's not for everybody, absolutely understand that, But in the main, our website is available 100% of the time, whereas actually the offices are only open for 30% of a week. So actually, enabling people to undertake transactional type of interactions with us in alternative ways is expanding our offer, certainly not taking it away from individuals who need to speak to us either face to face or on the telephone. But I think probably, and this is why we do need to do some surveys out there, there is quite a large proportion of our residents who actually want to do business with us outside of office hours too.
Martin.
So this was on a different point. I
Oh,
don't know
was
if
it?
anybody had got any on.
Okay, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is totally related, and that is that I found it difficult reading this report that we're referring to our residents as customers at all. As far as I'm concerned, I'm a resident, I pay council tax, and therefore I'm a partner with this organisation. I'm not a customer of this organisation, and I think we're moving too fast towards a completely different way of looking at the people that we're actually serving. Also, I raised at the SEAC meeting that how many of the elderly population don't have access to the internet, and the BBC were kind enough the following day to answer that question for me, and they said 39% of over 75s don't have access to the internet, which I found really high, but also we really need to act upon, because those people are council taxpayers. They are partners in this organisation. You might call them stakeholders, but I think they are actually more than that. Also, one last point. I work part-time with Citizens Advice, and we had an instance of somebody needing to complain about a council, but as they were dyslexic, they couldn't run through the form that was online. That was their only method of complaint, and therefore they came to Citizens Advice just to be able to get the support that they needed to complete the complaint form. That's the sort of thing we've got to try to avoid and help people with. Thank you.
Okay, Martin.
Sorry, I'm on a completely different point, and that was in 4.9 on page 43. It says about the new position, and then in Appendix 2, page 55 to 58, it has the new structure. It was just really clarity around: is this a completely new position, or is it a redeployment of that position, and what's the financial impact on the council for that?
So it's a completely new position. We've not had this position before, rather than a recycling of a role. The impact on the council is that we've secured the funding for 2 years from the COVID budget. It's a 2-year fixed term post that we're proposing. We need to make sure that this role adds value. We need to make sure that this role does all the things that we think it will do. We're confident it will, but that 2-year period gives us an opportunity to review at the end of that 2-year period to make sure it's doing what we need to do, and that there's value in the role for us to invest forward. The link to the COVID funding is really the fact that customer behaviour has necessarily had to change, and the way we structure our business necessarily had to change for us to deal with COVID, the COVID pandemic. So we have now staff that work remotely. We have the technology to allow staff to work remotely from any location. Customers who perhaps wouldn't have dealt with us through things like video conferencing are now doing so. Customers weren't able to come into our offices for a long period of time, so that's changed some of the demand. We really need to understand what that means, and that's why we need to go back out to customers. So kind of picking up on the earlier point as well, I absolutely would be horrified if we were taking away the channels for customers to be able to talk to us directly or come into our offices if they need to. I think this is about us taking those customers that don't need to do that out of the equation, putting them through perhaps a digital channel or a virtual channel, which is better for them to allow our staff to be able to deal face to face with those that need to deal with us and the more vulnerable. So that's how I would see this evolving.
Okay.
Sorry. Sorry, Mike.
That's fine.
Oh, sorry, I thought you wanted to.
No,
Oh, right. Sorry, yes, Ken.
Just to clarify, Chairman, it may have been covered, but I assume parish councils will be advised about this new customer service team. They may already have been so. Is that correct, Chairman?
It's not a new customer service team as such, Councillor. It's a new customer experience and insight role, so a single position. The customer service team, the customer frontline team will still be the same team as we have now in both councils.
Yes,
so
the parish councils will be formed.
of the role,
Yes.
if that's something that that we're required to do, absolutely, Councillor. Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, certainly we have regular meetings with the town and parish, so we will at forums so that we can make that announcements at the next one that we have, just to let them know.
Thank you.
Nigel.
Not having a lot of luck. Oh, here we go. I'd just like to follow up on what Sue said. I worry about this use of the word customer. A customer is someone who has choice. They can go to Tesco's or Asda or whatever. They're not compelled to go there. Whereas as residents of Broadland and any other council, unless we choose not to pay our council tax with the necessary problems that follow from that, we have no choice. Other than to perhaps move to a completely different council. We aren't customers, we're residents, and I think as Sue was trying to say, we're certainly either a partner or a stakeholder. And I do worry about a customer element where somebody doesn't have a choice in the whole business. Just a comment, thank you, Chair.
Chair, I'm happy to take that one forward. Actually, it's not just residents we deal with businesses a lot as well, both from business rates perspective, but also planning. We deal with agents, we deal with land developers. That's why we've gone for the wider term customer. It's not just interactions online with our residents. We deal an awful lot with the businesses. Also, we actually, some of the services we provide, like the garden waste, is discretionary. And in South Norfolk, the leisure is as well. And even things like the holiday play schemes are discretionary. And sometimes we have people who don't live in the district actually participate in those, sort of specifically on the borders, for instance. So that's why we've gone for the much wider term of customers, because it covers more than just our residents.
Okey-dokey. So the customer charter, just this question, provides a key point of reference. Where is the customer charter?
It's in Appendix 1.
One.
Put the page number up, I'm sorry. Let me just see. It's page number 47, yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Okey-dokey. Right, thanks. So just to clarify this before we wrap this up, how are you going to progress back through the council channels, ONS, cabinet, whatever, portfolio holder, key survey gathering, intelligence to drive at the service provision in terms of communication on the point that's been raised here? How would you come back to council channels for that?
I guess there are perhaps two ways. The first one, we would continue to report back through the Spark coordination group, which comes through to SIAC, but no further than that, I believe. Quarterly reporting, I think, would be the correct place. Oh, sorry. half yearly reporting would be probably the best place to bring it back through underneath the customer satisfaction measure, as we've got space to give you a lot more information there. We can give you the headline measure. We can also break down what else is in there in terms of any bespoke other surveys or any emerging issues that come out from it. If that would be an acceptable route to bring it back through.
Well, yeah, and the reason why I'm raising this because I've just counted up some comments here, and it does seem I've not heard an objections to this sort of theme from members that's been sort of discussed here and some concerns around this. So, would you be in a position in 6 months' time to come back to an ONS, perhaps on our work programme, to just review back to us about how that customer identification survey's gone in terms of need and in terms of particularly on the communication point?
I'd be happy to do that.
I was going to say, I think it might take us up to 4 months to recruit this individual person to that position because we haven't gone out to advert yet, and often people have to give 3 months notice. So, Chair, perhaps if we come back in 9 months to give them time to get into the post and then to obviously look and carry out the surveys, collate that information and bring it back. I just don't think in 6 months, by the time they come in, they might only literally have a month to do that piece of work. So perhaps if we could look to 9 months at the minimum to allow that person to get into post.
Okay, and so on that direction, if you could just, make note of this, whatever, so you know exactly what, because it is really. So I know the 9 months. I know certainly within my ward, and I don't know other councillors, but I'm already putting down questions to parish councils about service to see what their feedback is as well from residents. So hopefully by that time as well, some of us will have some perhaps some more detail ourselves to feed back in as well. And I think it's quite important. We're here for a reason as councillors to also have an input and feed in terms of that information as well. So as a proposal, which I'm proposing, could we agree that in 9 months' time, we have a review coming back to us on our work programme to feed back that information? I'll move that. Has everybody seconded it? Yeah. Can all agree? There was a nod too, so I tell right finger. Yeah, I think that was unanimous. Was it? Any against? No, it does. Yeah. Okay. Right. So we move to the recommendations now. Yeah, page 45. So we have 8.1 moving through to 8.12, 8.13. 8.2, we ask Cabinet to adopt proposed complaints handling procedure, the adoption of proposed unreasonable persistent complaint policy. And are we happy to recommend all of those? If so, is there a proposer? Okay, proposed by Martin, seconded by Ken. All those in favour?
That's carried, Chairman. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in favour.
Any against? Yeah.
1 against, 1 abstention, is it?
So sorry, is that against? Sorry. Okay. And any abstentions? Sorry.
1 abstention.
1 abstention. Brilliant. Okay. Wonderful. Right. Thanks very much, Sean. Right, next item is item 13, skills and training project, and lead officer is Lucy Kirkham, who's here, I believe. And that's page 68. Do we concur, Ken? Wonderful. Hi, yeah. Hi, Mike and Lucy. Welcome. Much appreciated to see you both. And I believe it's you, Lucy, who's leading on this.
Yes, it is, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lucy.
Good morning, all. So I'm just going to provide a
Sorry, once we've dealt with this item, it's come at 11:25. We'll take our 10-minute comfort break, okay? By the way, sorry, Lucy.
That's okay. So I'm just going to provide a high-level overview of the skills and training reports. So the report sets out our proposed skills and training offer, which aims to increase the opportunities available to local residents, particularly in light of the pandemic and as we move into the post-pandemic job market. So the first stage of the process was to conduct some robust background research, and this largely confirmed what we had expected about the groups of individuals that had been most impacted by the pandemic. So that our research led us to the identification of 4 key cohorts, and these are the groups that we think would most benefit from a skills and training intervention. So the groups are school leavers, those leaving higher education, recently unemployed and underemployed, and also individuals wishing to start up their own business. I think it's worth noting that there are numerous organisations operating in the skills and training area. Already it's quite a crowded space in that respect. So before we drew up our proposals, we conducted an internal and external audit of the current skills and training support. So this way, we were able to ensure that we were avoiding duplicating any existing provision when drawing up our proposals. So we propose to categorise our responses in 3 ways. Firstly, an advocacy function, which is really important. We currently have officers sitting on a range of network groups. Most recently, we've joined the Norwich Employability Network. Also signposting, what became quite apparent when conducting these audits was the range of provision that's already out there. So we'll look to signpost residents towards existing services. For example, the Chances programme, which is currently run by County Council, and various other programmes as well. We also set out in the report some proposals for direct delivery. For example, Choices is a programme we're looking to review and improve to ensure it benefits more people. I'd also just like to add just mention apprenticeships quickly. Apprenticeships are very much a priority for the councils. Our apprenticeship levy is currently underutilised, so we're looking at developing a coordinated apprenticeship scheme. This will have two objectives. Firstly, it will enable us to provide opportunities for young people, and it will also enable us to fill our own skills gaps in certain areas across the councils. As part of this, we're looking for agreement on the establishment of a centralised apprenticeship budget, which we believe will encourage teams across the councils to take on apprentices. So that's all I was going to say about the report. That there are 2 recommendations. The first is to note the impact on skills and training, and the second is in regard to the centralised apprenticeship budget. Just on the second point, I'd just mention that we currently have 8 apprentices in post, and increasing this to 10 will enable us to reach the target set by the Local Government Association. We also anticipate that full use of our apprenticeship levy will take us up to in the region of 24 apprentices. So that was all from me. Myself, Mike, Jamie and Tig are here to answer any questions. Thank you.
And Chairman, if I may, just to point the apprenticeship fund will be used as existing underspend, so we're not looking at additional funding for that. That's to utilise existing money in a better way. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Natasha?
Thank you, Chair. Regarding the apprenticeships, are you prioritising more vocational apprentices rather than the trend we've seen for higher education and degrees for older people who are more established, school leavers, younger people, and who just need a bit more hands-on experience? Thank you.
Yeah, I can answer that one. Yes, so there all the apprentices we're looking at, or most apprentices, are vocational led. So, for example, We've got shortages in planning, environmental health, but wider there's occupational therapy. So all those perhaps those traditional vocational skill set, people just aren't going into that kind of trade anymore. So that'll be a push there. But there's a mix of both. There's those type of apprentices. There's graduate apprentices can add value, and we wouldn't want to lose that. But there's also those entry level graduates as well, entry level roles as well. So there'll be a balance. And what we want to do, we set up as in a previous skills and training board, which the apprentices would all be looked under that. So what we'll be looking at as a group of officers is what skill set do we need in the council, and then how best to match that. But certainly vocational apprentices are very much in there, yes.
Thanks. Ken? Oh, no, yes, Ken.
Does that work? Yeah, I've got 2 questions. Firstly, on page 84, future paths about school careers advice. And I noticed we're looking for to have ambassadors with there. I'd just like to know, have we thought out how we're going to install this and visit schools? I have to say that for myself, I'm an NVQ assessor and verifier. And if you look through all of these counsellors here, there's a huge amount of skill sets that they've had throughout all of their working life in industries. And I would like to see counsellors come in and be part of your team with it. So my question is, what's the future path? When are we going to start this, and who are we going to involve? And please make sure that we do involve counsellors who I'm sure would be happy to volunteer to assist. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly. And certainly that's something we're working with the LEP and schools and how we make that come alive. And certainly careers advice has taken a hit over the last few years. And I can remember a long time ago when I was at school. But, that what schools are missing and what young people are missing is contact with people in business. And it's that kind of inspirational stuff, which is not just, do you want to be a nurse or a firefighter or whatever. It's actually contact with someone who can talk you through, what it is to work in a type of industry, what it is to work, and how can I best get into that kind of line of work. So very much as our thinking is about rather than the kind of bog standard careers day, which used to happen. So we go into school for a day and we talk about a range of careers. There could be a whole range of exciting things like coffee and chat, going in for half a day just to talk about, my experience as how I got into work. And so I think counsellors can play an important part of that. So as well as the thinking around staff ambassadors, then very much I'll take that on board about counsellors as well, because certainly they can add value.
Just as a supplementary question, can I just ask on there? Carabreck House, I remember years ago we trained or assisted training an immense amount of individuals who turned out forming their own companies of electrical, plumbing, all of the trades of which none of us can get or find anywhere today. Are we going to, at some stage, look to falling back to assist these industries? Because we had a fantastic outcome from that. And I met many of them on an open day with that. And they were so excited about the fact that we'd helped them, got them through, and they'd formed their own companies. And we set a whole lot of individuals to do fine work in their own companies. Thank you.
I don't know if you...
I mean, obviously Carabred's being looked at, but Teague, do you want to come in on that point? Or?
Yeah, happy to. Thanks for the question. So we are undertaking a review of Carabrec at the moment and looking at what the best use of that facility is. It will be used as a training facility in some way. Picking up the points made in the paper, it's about identifying where those key gaps are, and what we are keen to ensure we don't do is replicate something that somebody else is already delivering at a quality that we agree with, we think is the right quality. So we don't want to use Carabrec as a place to replicate, but we want to use it absolutely to fill gaps. And so that's how we intend to use it. But as I said, there's a review of Carabrec going on and its future use and how we can best utilise that. The other thing we need to take into account is that more and more training. There's always going to be a need for face-to-face training at a place like Parabec, but more and more training is going to be delivered online, and people, the evidence suggests that people are very keen to be able to undertake training at a time that suits them, as opposed to having a certain time that they need to be in a certain place to undertake training. The idea of delivering training in a flexible way is certainly the increasing trend in the delivery of training. So as we think about the service offer and the skills and training agenda and the business support agenda and Carrick, we just need to take all of those factors into account.
Thank you very much.
Caroline?
How many people you're taking on are young apprentices and newly into the workplace, or how many are existing employees and you're upskilling them?
So the exact number we haven't come to that yet, but it's likely there'll be a mix of both. We want to, there's validity in both, but using apprenticeships to upskill our own internal staff, but apprentices bringing new apprentices in, that's a really tangible route as well. So I can't give an exact number, but I do know that we are exploring both options.
So can you give an exact number in the future?
Well, what we'll do is as we start, so we know this year to bring ourselves up to 2.5%, we know we've got to have either 23 or 24 apprentices. So as we look at that cohort and then we find out, what the mix is, then obviously we can review that, and that'll be something that will be fed back to members anyway. And obviously looking at, have we got the right amount? Are we, and have we got the right approach? So we will be bringing that back as well.
You said online courses. A lot of these courses are practical courses, like bricklaying, plumbing, electricians. They can't be done online.
No, they can't. I have to confess that I wasn't directly involved. I wasn't here if and when Broadland Training Services was delivering trade courses. I just take your word for it that they actually were. They haven't done it in the last few years that I'm aware of. Most of the courses, the small business related type courses, have been very much the sorts of courses that can be delivered online. I guess as part of our overall approach, if City College and other private providers, Eastern and Otley College, aren't providing those trade-related courses, then it's possibly something we look at again. But as I understand it, most of those are covered by City College, etc.
Yeah, just and funny enough, I didn't work, although I was a contractor to BCTS years ago for the Prince's Trust, and so they used to deliver a lot of online and a lot of face-to-face courses, and I think that's the bit, as Tig has alluded to, is a lot of those now are dealt with by other colleges. What we don't want to do is replicate, but absolutely there is still a value in that face-to-face training. And as Councillor Kelly has said, we'll be looking at what courses are needed, what skill set are needed, and if they need to be delivered face-to-face, well, they'll be delivered face-to-face, because you can't do, I trained as an apprentice in farming, and you can't learn to set bricks up if you're on an online course. So, that's got to be practical. So I think, and there's an absolute validity in both. And we know certainly with online training as well, that's great. If it's a short course, that's fine. But there's a really good aspect occasionally coming together as well. So, as one cohort, just because that relationship, that banter over a coffee, you do need that as well. And I think as we start to look at online, can we use online to be more efficient for elements of the course which can be done, for example, in the evening to help with childcare, etc. But there'll be elements that actually need to come in as well. So this is a position in paper about where we're going. We've still got to do that thinking, which will certainly include that thought.
Okey-dokey. Carol, I know he's having to turn around because Tig was back there, but if you could just remember your mics in front of you, because we couldn't hear you. Okay. Sue?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I think actually partly mine is rather like Caroline's. I was pleased to see that we were looking at young people and entry level, but I was also keen to see that we were looking at over 50s, who are people who, when they lose a job, actually find it extremely difficult to get back into work for one reason or another. So I think that's a really positive move. My worry, actually, like Caroline's, is I would not want to see it used to supplement existing qualifications, where I have known people who have already got a degree and perhaps an MA and want to do another technical thing in their field, who could be signed up as an apprentice and use part of that levy. And I just feel that, you know, those people are in jobs where they could either fund their own training or their employer could fund their training for them. So I'm reluctant to see the levy used inappropriately, or what I perceive to be inappropriately. But otherwise, it looks like a very good scheme. Thank you.
Yeah, and just picking up on that point as well, because there's a limited resource here, isn't it? We were talking about getting up to government recommendations here, 23, 24, wherever it is. So I think the point that Sue's making is, if that levy is then used up on existing people that have degrees within the council and it's just to upskill them, is that really the best resource of that levy, particularly when we're a responsible employer? So again, if we could have feedback on that, because I think it's something that councillors would be interested to try and have an overview of, at least in terms of that, Mike, you know. And then I've got Ken Leggett, Grant, and then Sue Catchpole, and we'll try to round this up then, I think. Okie dokie. Ken?
Thank you, Chairman. A very important service. And the point that was related in the link with existing training establishments and colleges. And one of the challenges, which I'm sure you would agree with, is getting the right quality and experienced trainers in these colleges. I was associated in my earlier days with Eastern College a lot, and I mean, they are having a tremendous problem now to get the right degree of people to teach and train. You've got the experts, but you need the ability, and you need to be paid the right sum of money. And that's one of the biggest problems. But I was glad you are working with these people. Thank you.
Yes, we are. And I mean, that's a age-old problem about how, you know, having the right skills. I actually trained at Eastern when I was 16, and old farm boys who were extremely good at teaching, but they had the practical knowledge as well. And as we, you know, teaching as a profession, and particularly colleges, we absolutely need to get those right skills in, and also be working on that. But it's a perennial problem. It's not just ours. It's obviously everyone.
Okie dokie, right, Grant, and then Sue.
Thank you, Chairman. My question was predominantly exactly the same as what Councillor Sue Holland asked. I also have a concern about those over 55 who are also, they have got the skills, they've got the training, and we're losing that, but we're trying to fill it up because of younger people needing to come into employment. So yes, I do have a concern about that. But just going on about upskilling of people that have got skills and qualifications, you got people that have got PhDs packing shelves in Tesco's and Sainsbury's as well. But their qualification is totally inappropriate for finding employment. So that is something that also needs to be taken into account when we're looking at trying to get people into employment. Thank you.
Sue?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just wondering about reducing the barriers to young people going into training on a very logistical level. If we were to perhaps invest in assistance with transport from the market towns to City College, which is where the vocational training courses tend to happen, is that something we could get involved with to try to make it more straightforward and affordable for young people to actually undertake these training courses, especially if they're skills that we're finding a shortage of? Thank you.
Certainly, I mean, you picked up on a very valid point, and we've been working with county a long time on a kind of or trying to work with county on a total transport system, because this is how we get young people particularly, but also returning to work mums and older people. How do you provide a realistically viable transport system in Norfolk when you've got rural areas, but is a challenge and something we continually need to work on. And that challenge isn't just about getting people into work. It's also, once they're in work, then how do they then provide their own transport? But certainly something I know that county are looking at, and this will be one part of our remit which we explore is how do you particularly get that 16 to 19, 20 cohort from a rural area into a course that's actually affordable and relevant. So it's a good point to pick up. It is an absolute barrier for young people, but also particularly return to work mums. So that's something that we've got to continually work to, but that's captured.
Yeah, they've got to repeat it. Okie dokie. Right, yeah, and this is a bit of long-term memory, so it might be foggy, but I believe it's 2015 that the county did away with the supplement grant for young people going to college. I think it was 2015. So the point about that, Sue, is it's been a county funding issue in terms of transport, and I think that was taken away in 2015. I might be foggy there. But certainly it's a county issue that needs to be resolved. I think that's what you were saying. In discussions with county, it's been flagged up, but the county council needs to actually supplement that with direct funding, because you're right, there's children out in, young people out in rural areas need to get into, there's actually sixth form, etc., moving forward in the colleges, there aren't any. So you've got to go all the way into the city. You can't get there, particularly if you've got if you've got parents on low income or claiming universal credit. The money isn't there for you to go and get that education. And I'm aware of some that didn't because they simply couldn't afford it to get there on a bus, which is ridiculous. So that's clearly an issue for county, certainly one that's, in my mind ever since actually, but it is a county issue, but any pressure that Broadland can put on it would be much appreciated, I think, Right, so just wrapping this up, we've got recommendation on page 80. It's also on 69, so take a pick, whichever page you want there. But we've got 8.1, 8.2. I'd just like to say there's a lot in this report which I think is welcome, and it's a good report moving forward. And I think probably I haven't heard anything to the contrary, just clarification really and emphasis from councillors. So putting this proposition to councillors. Do we have a proposer for 8.1, 8.2? Ken and Sue Holland and Ken Kelly and Sue Holland. All those in favour? Looks unanimous. Yeah, brilliant, wonderful. Okay. Right. Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Mike, again. And perhaps we'll have a chat outside the room, Mike, about county finance. All right, thanks very much. We'll take our comfort break now. So we've got 1 minute past. So I think actually 12. So if we make sure we're back 12, 13 minutes, yeah. Next item, item 14, emergency planning structures, page 94. Lead officer Nick. Nick Howard, would you like to amplify, please? And welcome, Nick.
Chairman, thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. Really pleased to be able to be here to talk about this report and to this report for you, and I'll keep it relatively brief. The district councils have long been involved in emergency planning. We've got a unique role. We've got a unique position with local communities, a unique problem-solving role, and when we are tested, it's when there's a serious incident. And the question then comes, what can the local authority do? Under the Civil Contingencies Act 2004, we have a duty as a Category 1 responder. That's the highest level of responder to emergency incidents. It's important to say that we're not a blue light service and we can't do what the emergency services can do, but there's a range of things, an unrivaled range of things that local authorities can do to support communities. This year in March, there was an integrated review of security and community resilience, and that has emphasised the role, particularly in relation to severe weather and flooding emergencies for local communities. In some ways, the integrated review picks up on the 1974 civil defence frame of reference. So we will expect to see budgets for emergency planning come forward following the integrated review. Coming to the report, the real test, as I say, will come when a serious incident happens, and I've mentioned in the report at sections 1.3 and 1.4 some of the context for what the proposal is here. So we have the opportunity to receive and handle warnings and alerts, to be at the scene of a local incident with the local community, rolling our sleeves up, and then providing that coordination with broader services and partners. There are various types of incident, from severe weather to flooding to major fires displacing people, serious transportation incidents, serious pollution incidents. And of course, these things will always happen outside of normal working hours. That's just like a rule, isn't it? That major incidents happen when council services aren't at the desk. Specifically, in section 4 of the report, we propose in this report to establish a 24/7 365 emergency incident officer scheme at low cost. Now that would offer a guaranteed response, and the role is outlined at paragraph 4.3 of the report. It would mean that we have the opportunity to send an officer who would roll the council sleeves up at the scene, work with local people and alongside them, and that is an enhanced capability compared to what we can offer at the moment. The proposal is to introduce a scheme of emergency incident officers drawn voluntarily from the council staff, and they would perhaps operate on a weekly basis, 1 week in 8, on a rotation, and they would respond and be equipped with all the plans so that they can respond at any time when a serious incident happens. There would be, at no cost, senior support to those officers provided on call from the CMLT membership. Now, finally, just to say, our collaboration and one team enable this to happen at an efficient cost when it's across a wider area and a population of 260, 275,000 people. Other Norfolk districts do already have funded arrangements out of hours for emergency response. Broadland and South Norfolk currently don't, but this proposal would give us a very strong capability, as I say, at a low cost. Finally, this proposal reflects an area of work in the delivery plan, and that's at item H3A in the delivery plan for the current year, which refers to emergency planning operating capability. So this improvement in the strength and depth of response is something that I think as elected members you could be proud of when the need arises. We know we don't have emergency incidents every week, but when they do happen, they're serious for local people, and that's what we aim to provide for. And I'll halt there, Chair.
Thank you very much. Martin, have you got your hand?
Thank you. Yes, welcome the report. From the parish level, I mean, some parishes and some town councils do have the emergency plans as well. And similarly to how the neighbourhood plans were geared up within the National Planning Policy Framework, is there any way that the two would be joined up? So, because some councils may have the emergency plan, some don't, and it's just how we link all the two together. Because again, this is going in to say, right, okay, we are going to be on the ground level and talk to these people if they've already had a plan, because you don't want too many people all trying to take command and do everything all at once.
Thank you. So there are two potential disadvantages of emergency planning. One is that everybody thought someone else was doing it, and the other is that too many people try to do it all at once, and that you crowd the scene. We're really proud to have a number of active community emergency plans in the Broadland district already. And those will wax and wane. So there will be a key linchpin, a dynamo in a local community who behind a community emergency plan. We maintain a number of networks with those people responsible for community emergency plans. And in the delivery plan this year, we expect to promote and expand the range of communities served by them. It's not a requirement for local communities to have a community emergency plan, but it can really help to have one when you need it. Be that in cold weather and power cuts where you want to get people somewhere dry and warm, in flooding, or when people are displaced from their homes and they want somewhere nearby rather than to be carted off somewhere for temporary accommodation. To get to your question, the emergency planning officers already maintain a contact network with the community plan key people, and we would be providing that to the emergency incident officer so that they can mobilise and contact people locally during a local incident. So wherever that might be, pick a part of Broadland district, there's a serious emergency incident. We've already got a number of key contacts, and we can use that WhatsApp method or text message method to contact the local communities affected and just start to gear up their plan alongside ours. So that joint problem solving between the district council and the local communities can only be enhanced beyond the existing community emergency plans. So we see those working together really well.
Caroline?
Do you have documentation or anything you can give to local parishes? And would you help them set up their own plan?
Yes, we do. We routinely do that, and we've run a session recently for parish and town council clerks just to promote again the community emergency plans and what they are able to do. So we do it every year. We'll do it again this year, and we'll be providing a really strong encouragement for all the local communities. So that's been part of our routine for the last few years. So some of those plans have been in place for a specific reason, and because a specific person was really keen, and they've just started to wane slightly. So we'll be looking to re-energise existing plans, but every local parish that would like to have a community emergency plan would be really keen to work with them. We might be asking you, who are the key people if your parish doesn't have one or your ward doesn't have one, that we could be working with to make that happen. Yes, there'll be a briefing session during this year, and I'll make sure that you've got that from Simon Faraday Drake and Jenny Bloomfield, the emergency planners.
With Norwich in respect of the airport, because the airport is in Norwich, obviously County Council property, but the overshoot to the runway is in Broadland, in Elston, near the entrance. And can you reassure me that there's close liaison in that? I mean, a flood is a flood, and you can kind of see it coming on, whereas an aircraft overshooting the runway is immediate.
Probably the strongest reassurance I can give you is to say I don't have a meeting with the emergency planners without the emergency planning officer at Norwich being mentioned. They're a really tight-knit group of emergency planning officers across the county, but certainly in the Greater Norwich area. So there's really strong, very, very, very clear and dynamic connections between them. If we felt there was a gap or a shortfall in emergency planning in the Greater Norwich area, the emergency planning officers would be the first to say, right, we've spotted something new and we're on it. So there is a very strong relationship, an overview across all of the potential threats that we might see. So I hope that's suitable reassurance.
Ken, and then Sue.
I swear again. Thank you, Chairman. Yes, Nick. Just to let you know that both Councillor Brennan and myself sit on the Norfolk Rivers and the Broads internal drainage boards. They were called for assistance in the last serious incidents we have. And what I suggest is that we strongly liaison with them, because they were called out quite a few times to assist you. And having been an emergency incident officer previously, I like to say this recommendation is perfect for what we need, because with the way that climate change is happening, both of the boards are ready for emergency action during the winter, because we know that, there's going to be severe flooding in the communities. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is something that has concerned me a little, in that I appreciate that we as councillors have our role to play should there be a local emergency, but I don't feel like I've had any training in what it is that I, as our local councillor, would be expected to do. Is that something that's on the cards for members? Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, it is. During this financial year, we not only are we looking to overhaul the emergency plans, but clearly you'll want to be well cited to what those revised emergency plans might say, what they offer, and just to be satisfied yourself that there's no shortfall in what they offer. So we'll make sure that you're fully cited to that. We'll run a training and briefing exercise so that you can see the key incidents we would expect to deal with, and subject to agreement to the proposal in the report that you see here, we'd like to provide you with some specific briefing as to, once it's established, as to what does it look like, how does it work, if it comes to an emergency response being scrambled to your locality, what can you expect, and what contact would you receive? Clearly, you have unique roles as eyes and ears, and with the unique intelligence as to who might we best engage with in local communities. So we'll be wanting that to work really smoothly.
Anyone else? Yeah. Right, just a couple of questions from myself. So the 13,000 from revenue and the 2,000 for equipment, that is split on 45-55 for South Norfolk. There's not 13k each. It's actually split. Yeah. Okay. And is the intention is intended that that would be permanently funded from revenue?
Chairman, yes, it is intended to be permanently funded. So that revenue will fund the recruitment, the establishment, and the standby costs and the out-of-hours activation costs for the emergency incident officers. So it's there to ensure that whatever time of the day or night, somebody with the right training, with the right equipment, will respond to the incident. Some things we can deal with without the need to travel, and we're not looking to create to fulfil a need that doesn't exist. But when officers do need to travel and they need to have eyes on the scene, there'll be no hesitation and they'll be there. That does require us to have a revenue budget that runs through into the future. However, I hope that this is a low and efficient cost that you could be satisfied is proportionate to that response.
Yeah, and I think from the comments you've heard from councillors, and Ken mentioned this as well, certainly from my point of view as well, this is absolutely needed, I feel. And as you say, we currently are not covering this in this way. This 8 rotation that you talked about seems a very efficient way of dealing with it as well. So I've got no doubt that the ONS committee would agree that this is actually the best resource we could have in terms of emergencies. Also, just picking up a point that Caroline mentioned, we do as parish councils have the prompt from Broadland every year for us to adopt our own emergency plans. So I know within parish council where I'm vice chair, we adopted emergency plans 3 years ago, and then we update them every year. So it may well be that there's been some sort of communication, or perhaps your own council hasn't in the past for some reason, but there is a yearly prompt that comes out to do it, and it's well worth doing. In recently we had flooding, because we had that plan in place, we could tie up with Broadland, and it was fast. The local ward member there as well, down in Buxton, was out on the street and flooding as well, helping with the sandbags, but it was fast response, and that was well appreciated. So on that basis, just to move things along, not having any views to contrary, propose that we do recommend this. Seconded Caroline. All those in favour?
It's unanimous, Chairman.
Yeah, one out for those against, because I see everybody was in favour. Yes, and thanks very much, Nick, and much appreciated for the work.
Thank you very much for having me.
Right, next item is for item 15, Greater Norwich Local Plan, GNLP, submission to the Secretary of State for independent examination. And we have Mike Burrell present to present that, and Helen Mellors to assist as well, I understand. So please amplify when you're ready, and welcome to both of you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll just start by just giving a quick overview. So this is a really important stage of the local plan. It was, just as an update, discussed at place shaping last night, where it was agreed to endorse the recommendation to Cabinet. I think key to remember at this stage is the last stage, which was known as the Reg 19, was about soundness and compliance of the plan, which this council signed off, which also included signing off the agreed sites that we're putting forward to be considered. So this next iteration, which is the submission to the Secretary of State for the independent examination, has to look at what we received as a result of the last publication of the Reg 19 on soundness and compliance. And I'm just going to ask Mike to take you through the recommendation, because there are a couple of matters that there are outstanding in the recommendation, but there is some updates on one of those as well. So I'll just hand over to Mike to do that for you, Chair.
Thank you, Helen. Yeah, just to reiterate that the purpose of the Reg 19 is for people to make representations on soundness and legal compliance of the plan. So we produced our draft plan, the Reg 18C, that we consulted on a year or so ago. And then we produced this plan, the Reg 19, which we sought representations on earlier this year. So we've managed to process all those representations now, and have our view is that the plan is it is suitable for us to submit the plan. So in terms of the recommendations, these identify the caveats that are associated with that submission of the plan. So first of all, we agree, we're asking councils to agree that the GNLP is sound and to submit the plan to the Secretary of State for independent examination, subject to reaching an agreement in principle with Natural England through a statement of common ground in relation to European habitat protected sites. Now, Helen referred to some updates. We have been working very hard on Natural England. We have a draft statement of common ground, so it does look as though we will be able to submit on July the 30th as planned in relation to that issue. But that is a critical issue. We have to have agreement from Natural England that the way that our plan addresses those internationally protected sites is sound, and we're confident we're now in a place to be able to do that. The second recommendation relates to Gypsy traveller sites, and this is an ongoing issue. It's been an issue throughout the plan making process, largely because we didn't have any Gypsy traveller sites submitted to consult on. So we haven't been in a situation where we've been able to consult on any, but the fact remains we do have an evidence need for Gypsy and traveller sites. The number of pitches we need is around 68 throughout Greater Norwich to 2038. So we will need to identify sites, and we've had clear advice from our critical friend that is very likely the inspector will focus on this at the examination. But equally, our critical friend has advised that we should still submit the plan as we anticipated on July the 30th and move swiftly to identify how we'll provide these sites. The third recommendation is to agree to request that the appointed inspector make any main modification necessary to the plan to make it sound and legally compliant. This is just a standard part of the plan examination process. There will always be changes made to any plan at the examination, and we need to request that the main modifications can be made. And they will be made through the examination, the big consultation at the examination from the inspector, from us on what changes are required. And then the plan will come back to members, and you'll be able to vote on whether to adopt the plan with those changes or not adopt the plan. You can't adopt the plan without the changes proposed by the inspector. And then fourthly, the fourth recommendation relates to minor modifications and the examination process. So officers are currently drawing up a schedule of minor modifications to submit with the plan, but they really are minor modifications. They're things like factual updates, they're corrections. Some of them relate to comments made by Historic England and Natural England, but they're really not of any significance. So any significant changes that would be necessary would be through the examination, through the inspector, and they're termed main modifications. So I've talked you through the recommendations, and I'm very happy to take any questions in relation to this.
Thank you. Right, opening it up, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. I'm concerned reading through this report that this report is to the Cabinet of Broadland, asking to accept for sending it to the Secretary of State, the GNLP. But there's no mention within the report itself of the numerous objections received from Aylsham. I'm not convinced that this report has been written for the purpose. So is this report not able to be a discussion of the things that affect Broadland, the things that people within Broadland have raised? They're all in the appendices, completely understand that, but there's no discussion in there about the very high number of objections to the second site proposed in Aylsham. And it just doesn't feel like this is actually reporting to the Cabinet of what has been raised at that Reg 19 stage pertaining to the Broadland area, if that makes sense. Thanks.
Well, thank you. I know Paul Harris did respond to an email from you on this. The way it's been structured, this report focuses on process issues, the issues relating to submission, and it does rely on the GNDP report. It does rely on people looking at the GNDP report as well. So there are numerous comprehensive references to Aylsham in that GNDP report, and one does have to look at that to get the full overview. That was a decision on how it should be structured. I'm confident that all of the issues have been covered, and Aylsham has been, the fact that lots of representations have been made in Aylsham has been covered in some detail, and responses as to the reason why we still feel it's appropriate to continue with the existing strategy have been made, but they are in the GNDP report.
Well, as a resident of Aylsham, but also as put myself in the shoes of other residents of Aylsham who have gone to a lot of trouble to put together their objections, their comments, their reasons why they didn't believe that the Reg 19 was compliant, in as much as they hadn't been consulted on the addition of a second proposed development site. Not having any discussion in this report, which is available online for people of Aylsham to read, kind of suggests that they've been ignored, that there's been nothing taken on board. The volume of objections, the strength of feeling in the town, if you like, isn't reflected in the report. Yes, what has been raised is accessible if you go through various links, but surely this report would be much more reflective of what our residents have actually fed back to you, or fed back to the officers. If there was some discussion within that could then persuade the people who have gone to all that trouble to make those representations that they have been heard.
I can assure you they have been heard, and there have been responses to every representation made. But the fact is that the Greater Norwich Local Plan applies to 400,000 residents. So it isn't possible to cover in an overarching report the detail of one location, but we do provide links to detailed responses on Aylsham. And what we say in those responses are, in terms of consultation, the Reg 18C consultation took place. There was the Borough Road site was the preferred option. The Norwich Road site was an alternative option, a reasonable alternative. Both were consulted on, as were the overall numbers for the plan. Those were consulted on. Now, when moving from Reg 18 to Reg 19, it's very common that changes will have to be made to a plan. And in this case, as we discussed before the Reg 19 was released, that was because the numbers in the overall plan had to rise. Now, in relation to Norwich, for example, East Norwich had the numbers doubled at East Norwich from 2,000 to 4,000. Other locations had a rise in numbers, and Aylsham was one of those locations that had a rise in numbers. But I can assure you that consultation has taken place on that, in that we consulted on whether the numbers were right or not, and they did have to rise. And it's very, very, very common for changes to be made between a Reg 18 and a Reg 19 plan. That's the nature of consultation, because we will hear representations from various different, from developers, we'll have them from the bodies such as Natural England and so on. They have to take account of all of those. Now, in this case, we did include this extra site in Aylsham because it's such a good site. There really was, when making a decision for which to include in the Reg 18C, it was a really close decision over the Borough Road site or the Norwich Road site. With the inclusion of a primary school, at that stage the Borough Road site was chosen. But the fact that you now have a need for higher numbers has led to the inclusion of the Norwich Road site in Aylsham as well. And yeah, just to go back over the fact that all representations have been considered, and we're confident we've gone through the due process. And well, yeah, we feel we have.
Yeah, if I can just pick up on this, because the issue, of course, for ONS here is around risks to the council as well, oversight, etc. And the points that have been reflected by yourself back in terms of Sue's question, you're quite correct. There's various references to Aylsham all over the appendix and in the detail as well. Aylsham responded with 65 responses. And I'm not sure, Sue, whether you did a response yourself, but it doesn't matter anyway. There's 65 in there. And Town Council did an extensive overview of it, as you know. I think the key issue here is the difference between what is Regulation 18 and what is Regulation 19. 18, as you know, is direct consultation on sites in particular, and references all around the MPF to that as well. And therefore, there are some additional sites, not just Aylsham, that was included in 19, that were not consulted on under 18, which takes in consideration infrastructure, consultation on the infrastructure, the historic nature and setting of perhaps a town, and all those other matters, that then you can have consultation on 18. So under 19, that consultation hasn't taken place effectively to be able to consider those by officers in the same way as it would have been under 18. So what the challenge here is, and which you're aware of, is the soundness, and as Helen said, the legal imperative around this, which is about soundness, and is it legally sound? Is it legally correct as well? So that's the challenge. And fair question, I think, to yourself is this. There's been emphasis put in the report to timing, that you referred to, well, we could have gone back to an 18, but therefore this would delay time. That was a possibility. We've got time here of 6 weeks to have this submitted in. Then we'll have the inspector appointed. The inspector then has a view on it. At that point, could make an amendment. Then finally, I think it's around about November, we have the final examination at that point. So if, and this is the question, if the inspector or at the final examination, they were to conclude that this was not legally sound, this was not sound and legally compliant because of representations that have been made challenging the second site and the other sites in particular, that no consultation took place, then that would cause the council a further delay, because at that point there's a possibility that they could recommend that you go back to an 18 or that you rehash 19 again. So how confident of you in terms of that risk that would not occur, bearing in mind the strength of points that have been made in terms of these representations?
Well, to summarise, I am confident. We've had a legal view that the approach we've taken is the correct approach. You need flexibility in plan making. There will always be changes from Reg 18 to Reg 19. For example, at the draft plan stage, a new site could have been submitted and have been in some cases, and one or two of those have been included. Plan making requires flexibility. Circumstances change over time. In relation to the second question, I'd just reiterate what I said earlier. We did consult on the Norwich Road site at Reg 18C. We didn't say it was a preferred option, but we said it was a reasonable alternative. That was part of the consultation, and people were able to comment on that. Then in terms of the examination, this will, I have no doubt, the inspector will decide this is a matter for discussion at the examination, and quite right too, it should be. And then it'll be up to the inspector to decide what to do. So the different choices the inspector could take would be to strike out the site, or to include the site, or to do further consultation on it, because as I said, there is consultation at the examination stage, because there are always changes, there are always main modifications. So in terms of legal soundness, we're confident that this is a legally sound approach. But in terms of this being the end of the story, of course it's not. By no means is it the end of the story. That's the purpose of having an examination. So an independent inspector can decide whether this is the correct approach or not.
Okay, so just finishing on this point then. So originally under Regulation 18 there were 2 sites, but the consultation's a little bit different. At that point in time, it was either this site or that site. The consultation wasn't on 2 sites, and the impact and to the historical nature of the town, which is covered under NPF, and infrastructure of now an additional number of housing. That wasn't the premise under 18. So that's another point of challenge within the representations that have been made. Could also just ask you this last question around this as well. Would it be safer and sounder for the council which it could do at this stage, because Broadland is clearly one of 3, so it could actually put through an amendment at this stage going forward, to have taken out the second site at this stage, so that therefore all of the representations around the soundness and legal standing of this simply do not exist anymore, and therefore you're in a much more clearer position and with some certainty that this would not be changed by the inspectorate and back in November as well. Just a fair question, really.
Yeah, it's a fair question. But equally, you would have the people who are proposing the site would then raise at the examination the fact that they feel this site is a suitable, sustainable location for growth. It's absolutely a matter for discussion at the examination, the reason for the numbers being raised in Aylsham and accept that what we consulted on at Reg 18C was for lower numbers. That's absolutely correct. Let me reassure you, the infrastructure, we've been engaged with the infrastructure providers, the utilities providers, Norfolk County Council throughout this process. They're well aware of these raised numbers. They've not raised any objections. They've said that those raised numbers can be provided for. So in terms of your original question, would it reduce risk? I think, no, it wouldn't reduce risk because there'll be risk from the other side. So my explanation previously of how the examination works allows for debate of this matter at examination. That's the very purpose of the examination. You will always have one or two controversial sites, controversial issues. That's why we have the examination.
Okay, right. I'm just going to, in terms of time as well, open this back up for any other points. Sue, if there's, because I'm still picking up on your point, but I've just defined it in terms of O&S. Is there anything else that's on that before I move on?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just one thing, really. Go back to the residents who put in their objections. Can they be reassured that those objections are going to be read in full by the inspector? Is all of that information provided?
Yeah, that's so the two purposes of the Regulation 19 stage are, well, the purpose is for people to make representations. Then it enables officers to make a recommendation to members for you to decide whether to submit the plan. That's the first thing. And the second thing is all of those reps go to the inspector. The inspector reads all those reps and then decides what will be the matters for discussion at the examination. And I have, well, very, very little doubt that the inspector will choose Aylsham as one of those issues that should be discussed at the examination, the extra site. So as I said, this is by no means the end of the story. And those people who have made representations will have been asked whether they want their representations to be simply read by the inspector or whether they want to appear at the hearing. And I'm sure a number have said they want to appear at the hearing. So they will have that opportunity.
And also it's the weight of the responses and detail that leads to that happening, which has happened in Aylsham for sure.
Yeah, it's the weight and it's the justification in terms of good planning as well.
Okie dokie. For that point now, because we've covered that point well. So Caroline.
Thank you. On page 30 of your report, which is 137 for us, policy 5 homes, accessible housing, is that accessible, do you mean for wheelchair users or for disabled people? So it's necessary to demonstrate a need for accessible housing?
Yes, well, there's two aspects to it. It's accessible housing for wheelchair users, and also it's adaptable housing so that as people age, they can stay in their house can readily be adapted. So we have included quite a demanding policy for that in the plan. That's in there to be submitted. Some people from the development industry have said that is too demanding, that it would be too costly. We're holding the line on that, saying, no, we need these adaptable homes.
Exactly, they're definitely needed.
And we've got good evidence.
I was just a bit worried when it says, or delete this part of the policy. I would not want that deleted.
That's what they said we should do. That's not what we are doing. We're retaining that policy. So that's what the objectors said we should do. So again, that will be a matter for discussion at the examination, but we're confident we got good evidence for why we should retain that policy.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Morton.
Thank you. Sorry, mine wasn't site specific or anything else like that. It was more around point 6.6 on the risks on page 105, where it says the DNLP is prepared under an accelerated timetable. As such, it is not possible to carry out the Regulation 18 as agreed through the GNDB board and subsequently by council through updates. Then says a number of mitigation measures have been put in place through the acceleration programme. Could you just give more clarity on the mitigation processes, just to give members comfort that?
So there was to have been a consultation on settlement boundary extensions. That was the main thing that hasn't happened due to the accelerated timetable. That can be done through future plans if necessary. In terms of mitigation, we've engaged fully with all the infrastructure providers and so on. We've made sure that the speeded up timetable still covers all the major issues that we need to cover. One of the main things that was a victim of that speeded up timetable was the topic papers that we are continuing to produce. We would have intended for them to be produced as part of the Reg 19. That wasn't possible. That in itself isn't an issue in that topic papers are not a requirement. They assist the inspector.
Right, Sue?
Thank you, Chair. A general point, under policy 6, number 7, it says there's a need to allocate land to meet the needs of one particular business. I wondered if you could explain what that means. And secondly, it's really to do with the types of housing that are going to be built. How much consideration is being given for single people and single parent families who only have one income with which to pay either their rent or their mortgage? Is there any influence we have on the types of houses that will be built? Thank you.
Yes, so on your first point, that relates to Ben Burgess in South Norfolk. They are of the view that we should be providing a specific site for them to relocate to. We are working with them. The officer view is that there is a large amount of employment. There are a large amount of employment allocations to which they could relocate. We're working with them to try to identify the most appropriate site. So that is an ongoing piece of work that's being addressed, but that was their representation. They feel that we should specifically have identified a site for them. That's a very difficult thing to do because they have very specific demands and needs. In relation to your second point on housing, yes, so that's something that we had in the joint core strategy. We carried through to this, whereby we have needed housing needs assessments done for plan making, then we keep them up to date all the time. So when a planning application comes in, the development management officers dealing with that will know what's needed in Aylsham at that time in terms of the number of 1-bedroom homes, 2-bedroom homes, and so on. So that is something I think that we do deal with well and will be continued in the future.
I can just add to that, because when we do get our planning applications in, especially in relation to affordable housing, we do consult with our enabling officers, our housing officers, to make sure we get the right mix of housing that is needed for that particular area. So we work very closely with our housing colleagues, as well as looking at the studies we've got to inform what type of housing, both market and affordable housing, we need for each site.
Okay. Right, if there's no one else, we should now just turn to the recommendations. Now we have on page 108, we have recommendations 1, 2, 3, 4, and then under 4 we have A and B. Agree minor modifications to GNLP prior to its submission, and negotiate any main modifications to make GNLP sound as part of the independent examination. Before we go to those recommendations, we could take those separately, or is everybody happy to take those in one lump? No, but yeah, okay. So we're going to. So is everybody happy to take those in one lump or separately? Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay. Right. So before I put that to the vote, I do want to make, because we are talking about soundness and legal compliance, and we are at ONS, so I just want to make a comment that I would not be supporting this because I do not believe that it is sound. And I think there's a legal compliance issue with this as well, because the soundness in terms of regulation 18 to 19, in terms of second site, the additional numbers. And on that basis, I think that is a bit risky to the council, bearing in mind the representations that I've read and seen on the matter as well. So therefore, putting my particular individual ONS head on this, I would not be voting for that. So do we have a proposal and seconder for this recommendations? Ken's proposing, Sue second, yeah? Okie dokie. So all those in favour, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
5. And all those against?
2.
Abstentions? 1, 2, 3.
Carried, Chairman.
Thank you. And thanks very much for your report. I know it's been a long old haul for yourself in particular. You've been at this a very long time, and it's not over yet, is it? Yeah, the examination. And I'll probably be seeing the examination. All right. Take care. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Chair. So in front of you, you have the pensions discretion policy. It's quite straightforward. It's a legal requirement that we need to have, and what the policy does is
Sorry, it's just that Ken ultimately clarify this all the time. So that's page 161. Sorry, 160. Sorry, Emma.
That's okay, that's fine. So the policy in front of you, it's a policy that we've always had, but it hasn't been visited for quite some time, hence I'm putting it to you as a new policy. And it's how, as a council, we interpret the discretionary part of that legislation. The things we obviously need to take in mind with this is that we are using public funds, so we make sure that we take on board cost basis upon which decisions are made, not being rigid, but also ensuring there's equality across the board. So the policy, and I will take you to 164, the cabinet agenda, which is page, bear with me, something else of the other one. Hang on. Where the appendix starts. Bear with me.
Appendix 163.
Yeah, 164 of your ONS agenda. So what we've done there, just for ease and simplicity, so that everybody's quite clear on what we're saying, against each employer discretion, we've described that what that is, the regulation that links to, and then what our policy will be for our staff with regard to that. There's no change to what we've done in the past. It's carrying on as is, but written in a more simpler format. I'll leave that there, Chairman.
Just one second. Up to maximum 6.5. Yeah, got it. Thanks, Emma. I think it's pretty straightforward. This is actually part of the enabling from the legislation on that discretionary. Happens with all employers. When you're private, you need this discretionary, and also you need it as a local authority as well. So on this one, unless somebody's got a burning question on it, I'm actually going to propose this, and that we move to a vote on it. Is that acceptable? Okay, seconded is Nigel. So all those in favour? Thank you very much.
That's unanimous, Chairman.
Right, we move to item 17 now, exclusion of the press and public. I move that the press and public be excluded from the meeting for the remaining items of business, because otherwise information which is exempt information by virtue of paragraph 3 of part 1 of schedule 12A of the Local Government Act 1972, as amended by the Local Government access of information, variation order 2006 would be disclosed to them. I so move. I've had a seconder for that, so could we now move away from live stream and let me know when we have done?